welcome to the Room of Requirement. Today I'm going to be talking about something really interesting. So, egregores, I'm going to be explaining them, thought forms, group minds, and the collective consciousness. So, these are talked about a lot in the realm of Western esotericism, especially ceremonial or high magic. We work with these all of the time. Eventually, as magicians, we learn to create our own in the form of manifestation. It's kind of like manifesting on steroids. A lot of people have different ideas about what egregores are. You can even bring archons into it from Gnosticism. So people are going to have different opinions about what they are, but if you really start to understand exactly what they are and how they work, you can learn to work with them yourself. And some people are scared of them, but they're not really anything to be afraid of either. So let's just go ahead and dive right in. Among the many concepts found within Western esotericism, few are as fascinating, mysterious, and relevant to modern life as the idea of the egregore. Although the term appears frequently within occult literature, magical orders, and discussions of collective consciousness, it is often poorly understood. Some describe egregores as thought forms, others as group spirits, psychic entities, or collective intelligences. Depending on who is asked, an egregore may be understood psychologically, spiritually, magically, or metaphysically. What makes the concept so intriguing is that it exists at the intersection of consciousness, symbolism, belief, culture, and spiritual experience. The idea suggests that when groups of people focus energy, emotion, attention, and belief toward a common symbol, purpose, or ideal, something new may emerge, something greater than any single individual involved. So people don't realize that we are constantly individually doing this every day, all day long. We don't even realize that we're doing it. So whether viewed as a psychological phenomenon, a spiritual force, or an occult reality, the egregore has become one of the most important concepts in modern esotericism. Understanding it can fundamentally change how we think about religion, organizations, nations, magical orders, corporations, social movements, and even our own spiritual practice. So we are doing this as well. When we have a thought or make a decision, it's happening in the astral realm. If you have any kind of sleep paralysis and come outside of your body, you are going to actually see in your own personal dimensional space, you will see your own thought forms that you have created yourself. So what people don't understand is that this is constantly happening all the time. It's not some big nefarious thing. I mean, it can be, but as humans, we are thinkers and we are creators. And so every time we are just existing, we are creating these types of things. The word egregore derives from the Greek term egregoroi, meaning watchers or those who are awake. The term originally appears in ancient mystical and apocryphal literature, particularly within texts associated with the Book of Enoch. In modern occultism, however, the meaning evolved considerably. An egregore is generally understood as a collective psychic or spiritual entity generated through the thoughts, emotions, beliefs, symbols, and attentions of a group of people. One way to understand an egregore is to think of it as a group mind. When enough people focus upon a common idea, organization, deity, tradition, or purpose, a kind of collective field begins to emerge. This field influences the members who participate within it while simultaneously being sustained by them. The egregore becomes both a product of a group and a force that shapes the group. So we've got to kind of think macrocosm here and microcosm. So we are individually creating egregores, although egregores are known as like a group thing, collective thing, but we're doing it on macro and micro levels. They can also dissipate when we take our attention away from them. But when you learn to work with them consciously and responsibly, then because every time that we're practicing any kind of magic or connecting to something that thousands of people have been doing for a really, really long time, we're actually connecting to that. Even when we sit down to meditate, we're connecting to some type of egregore or thought, any kind of religion we participate in, ritual, anything like that. Just trying to help you guys understand and not have so much fear around these things, because people like to really hype them up and make it seem like it's a scary thing, but it's been part of human nature forever. So the goal is to learn how to work with it. Although the term originates in ancient sources, the modern concept of the egregore developed primarily through the 19th and 20th century occultism. French occultists such as Eliphas Levi and later esoteric organizations began using the term to describe collective psychic forces generated through ritual, symbolism, and shared belief. The concept became especially important within Rosicrucianism, ceremonial magic, and initiatory orders. Practitioners observed that certain groups seemed to develop a presence, atmosphere, intelligence, or spiritual character that transcended the individual members. Over time, the idea expanded into one of the central concepts of modern occult thought. Even outside occultism, the concept of the egregore has profound psychological implications. Consider a family, a corporation, a nation, a religion, or social movement. Each develops a culture, an identity, and set of values that influence the behavior of its members. Individuals enter these systems and often find themselves shaped by forces larger than their own personal preferences. Psychologically, an egregore may be understood as the collective unconscious expression of a group. Shared beliefs, symbols, traditions, myths, and emotional investments combine to create a larger field of influence. This perspective allows us to understand egregores without requiring any supernatural explanation. Yet many occultists would argue that this interpretation captures only part of the phenomenon. Within ceremonial magic and Western esotericism, egregores are often viewed as more than psychological constructs. Many practitioners believe that sustained collective attention can generate autonomous psychic structures possessing a degree of intelligence and influence. These structures are thought to exist within subtle dimensions of reality and can continue influencing individuals long after their creators are gone. From this perspective, an egregore is not merely an idea. It becomes a living current sustained through energy, attention, symbolism, and participation. This understanding helps explain why certain traditions, magical orders, and spiritual systems seem to possess distinctive energies that persist across generations. This can also occur within your own temple space, your own meditation area around your altar. The more that you practice, you're actually creating this type of environment that you connect to every time you walk into the room. So, like, for example, this is my temple room. So every time I come in here, I'm automatically, consciously, unconsciously connecting with the energy of all the work that I've done in this room. So the same thing goes with you. If you continuously do something in an area, you're going to create this kind of psychic imprint that you can connect to every time that you do your rituals, and it will stay there even when you leave. The concept of the egregore is closely related to the idea of a thought form. A thought form is generally understood as a psychic construct created through focused intention and imagination. So individuals may create thought forms through visualization, ritual, meditation, or concentrated emotional energy. An egregore can be viewed as a thought form operating on a much larger scale. Where a thought form may be created by one person, an egregore is typically created and sustained by many. The greater the number of participants and the stronger their emotional investment, the more powerful the egregore becomes. So this is what it's like in magical orders or covens. When you are working in a specific area, you build up that energy. I think that this also ties into sacred sites around the world where we have like Stonehenge, Machu Picchu, places like that, the cathedrals, all of our massive cathedrals all over the world, everything that's built on ley lines. I think that this type of energy gets created. Roslyn's Chapel is another one. This kind of energy gets created in those areas, and it gets highly concentrated. And so I think those sites were chosen for that reason and then fed into later, and that's why they still remain really powerful places today. One of the most controversial applications of the concept concerns religion. So many occultists suggest that religious traditions generate powerful egregores through centuries of prayer, devotion, ritual, symbolism, and collective belief. Whether one interprets these forces psychologically or metaphysically, there is little doubt that religious traditions develop enduring spiritual atmospheres capable of profoundly influencing the participants. The egregore of a religion becomes part of the experience of entering that tradition. Few environments illustrate the concept more clearly than initiatory orders. Organizations such as Rosicrucian groups, Masonic bodies, ceremonial magical lodges, and esoteric schools often cultivate symbols, rituals, teachings, and traditions over many years. As generations of members participate, the collective field develops and expands. Many initiates describe feeling the presence of this accumulated force during rituals, meditations, and ceremonies. This is one reason why many occultists place great importance upon lineage and continuity. An egregore does not appear instantly. It develops gradually through repeated intention, emotional investment, symbolism, ritual activity, shared purpose, and collective belief. Whenever a group of people consistently directs energy toward a common idea, a field begins to form around that idea. At first, this field may be weak and barely noticeable, but over time, however, as more individuals participate and invest attention into it, the field grows stronger. Traditions are established, symbols become meaningful, and rituals are repeated, stories are shared, and a collective identity emerges. Eventually, the egregore begins influencing the very individuals who created it. This reciprocal relationship is one of the defining characteristics of an egregore. The group creates the egregore, but the egregore also shapes the group. Every egregore requires nourishment. Its primary sources of nourishment are attention, emotion, belief, participation, symbolism, and repetition. Whenever people invest thought, energy, devotion, fear, admiration, loyalty, or identification to a collective idea, they strengthen the associated egregore. And this is why powerful organizations place enormous importance on symbols, rituals, slogans, uniforms, myths, and traditions. These elements reinforce the collective identity and continually feed the underlying field. The more emotionally charged the participation, the stronger the egregore tends to become. In occult terms, attention is energy, and where attention flows, the egregore grows. Like living systems, egregores appear to pass through stages of development. They are born through collective effort and shared focus. They grow through participation and sustained energy. They stabilize through tradition and continuity, and they may expand by attracting new members and increasing influence. However, egregores can also weaken. When people lose interest, abandon a movement, stop performing rituals, or cease identifying with the underlying idea, the flow of energy diminishes. The egregore gradually loses strength. Some disappear entirely, others persist for centuries. The longevity of an egregore depends largely upon its ability to continue attracting attention and participation. Many occultists point to religion as some of the most powerful examples of egregores. Over centuries, millions of people engage in prayer, worship, devotion, ritual, pilgrimage, meditation, and symbolic contemplation. These activities generate enormous collective fields that become associated with particular traditions. From an occult perspective, such egregores may require tremendous strength due to the vast amount of energy invested in them across generations. Each individual entering a sacred space for the first time often reports sensing a distinctive atmosphere. Whether interpreted psychologically, spiritually, or energetically, the phenomenon affects the power of sustained collective focus. Religious egregores are among the oldest and most enduring collective fields in human history. Entire nations can also develop egregores. Flags, anthems, founding myths, historical narratives, cultural values, and collective identities all contribute to the formation of a national field. Citizens often feel loyalty, pride, fear, hope, or emotional attachment toward the nation itself. Over time, the nation becomes more than a geographic territory. It develops a collective identity that shapes the behavior and beliefs of its population. Occultists sometimes described national egregores as among the most powerful forces influencing human civilization because they affect millions of people simultaneously. Modern corporations often demonstrate the principles of egregore formation remarkably well. Major companies develop identities, cultures, missions, values, symbols, and reputations that extend far beyond any individual employee. Employees come and go, yet the organizational personality remains. Customers often form emotional attachment to the brands, while employees internalize company values and culture. From an occult perspective, corporations frequently generate egregores that influence both internal operations and public perception. Some organizations possess such strong collective identities that they continue functioning according to established patterns, even when leadership changes completely. The rise of the internet has introduced entirely new forms of egregores. Online communities, social movements, fandoms, forums, and digital cultures can generate powerful collective fields despite participants never meeting physically. Memes, symbols, narratives, hashtags, and viral ideas can spread rapidly through collective attention. In some cases, these digital egregores evolve and influence behavior on a global scale. Many modern occultists view the internet as an unprecedented environment for the creation and amplification of collective thought forms. Ideas can now accumulate attention from millions of people within days rather than centuries. These three concepts are often confused, so thought forms, servitors, and egregores, but they represent different scales of operation. So a thought form is typically created as an individual, by an individual through concentrated thought, imagination, and intention, and it may be temporary or relatively simple. A servitor is a deliberately constructed thought form designed to perform a specific function. Many chaos magicians create servitors for particular goals or tasks. An egregore operates on a much larger scale. It is usually sustained by multiple individuals and develops through collective participation rather than individual effort alone. One might think of a thought form as a spark, a servitor as a tool, and an egregore as an entire ecosystem. One other thing that I would like to add is when it comes to people fearing these things, nothing can happen to you unless you believe it to be so. If your field is strong enough, if your nervous system is regulated, if your auric field is strong through your practice, your sovereignty, knowing that you are in control, that you are divine spark, that is going to be your protection against these things. So a lot of people are afraid of these things because they think they're influenced by them. But if you yourself, you are strong and sovereign and you're good, these things aren't going to affect you in the way that you think they are. So I just wanted to make that clear. So not all egregores are beneficial. Some encourage growth, wisdom, cooperation, creativity, and spiritual development. Others may reinforce fear, hatred, division, fanaticism, or destructive behavior. So this is what I was getting at here. You do not have to fall victim to this. It's mainly people that are unaware in non-magical communities that are living a materialistic life. They're going to be the type of people that may or may not be, influenced by these things. But if you're aware and you have a strong enough system and belief system, then you're going to be fine. So because egregores are shaped by the energy invested in them, their character often reflects the collective consciousness of those who sustain them. So an egregore built upon compassion and service will differ greatly from one built upon fear and hostility. This is why many occult traditions emphasize responsibility when participating in collective systems. Every contribution strengthens the field being fed. One of the most controversial questions within occultism concerns whether egregores eventually become independent entities. Some practitioners argue that sufficiently powerful egregores acquire a degree of autonomy and begin influencing events beyond the conscious intention of their creators. Others interpret this phenomenon psychologically, suggesting that collective systems simply develop self-perpetuating dynamics that appear autonomous. Regardless of interpretation, many occultists agree that powerful egregores often exhibit a remarkable ability to preserve themselves, attract new participants, and influence behavior. This apparent self-preservation is one reason the concept remains so fascinating. Magical creation of egregores. So some magical groups deliberately create egregores through ritual, symbolism, visualization, initiation, meditation, and repeated group activity. Practitioners intentionally build a collective field around a specific purpose. Over time, the egregore becomes a repository of the group's teachings, energy, and identity. New members entering the system may benefit from the accumulated force generated by previous participants. This deliberate construction of collective intelligence has been practiced within various esoteric orders, magical lodges, and spiritual organizations for centuries. Just as egregores can be created, they can also be dissolved. The most common method is the withdrawal of energy. When individuals stop feeding an egregore through attention, emotion, belief, and participation, its influence gradually weakens. Some occult traditions employ rituals specifically designed to dismantle collective thought forms. Others simply allow them to fade naturally through neglect. And the key principle remains consistent. What is sustained by attention loses power when attention is withdrawn. So if you do want to create them with a specific intent, you can give them a specific cycle as well, time cycle. You can have them end after a certain time. Ethical considerations. This is very important once you start doing this, and I wouldn't suggest working with these and trying to create these if you're not experienced with this and if you don't have any ethics. It's very important to use your power wisely. I've spoken about this before. So it's really important that you do this wisely. Okay. So understanding egregores raises important ethical questions. What collective systems are we supporting? What beliefs are we feeding? What organizations, movements, or identities are shaping our consciousness? The concept encourages self-awareness regarding the forces influencing our thoughts and behavior. It reminds us that we are not only individuals but participants within a larger field of meaning and influence. Every act of attention contributes to something. This question is whether we are consciously choosing what we empower. So if it's anything that induces fear, that is the opposite of fear, just think this is not loving. So there's white magic, there's gray magic, and then there's black magic. Okay, so when you start doing things that affect other people without their permission, that is a form of black. If you're doing something even nice for someone, like praying for their healing and don't get their permission, that would be considered gray. And white would be, getting permission and helping them. So it's just use your common knowledge here, right? Act from a place of love, basically, and you'll be fine. Okay, so as we move deeper into the study of egregores, we arrive at one of the most profound questions in modern esotericism. What is the relationship between individual consciousness and collective consciousness? Human beings do not exist in isolation, so we are constantly influenced by our families, our communities, our cultures, religions, organizations, nations, and civilizations. Our beliefs, values, identities, and assumptions are shaped by forces far larger than ourselves. The concept of the egregore suggests that consciousness itself may possess a collective dimension. When groups of people think, feel, believe, or act together over long periods of time, a shared field of consciousness emerges, and this field influences the individuals who participate within it while simultaneously being sustained by them. Whether understood psychologically or spiritually, the egregore represents the mysterious space where individual minds and collective consciousness intersect. Carl Jung and the collective unconscious. Although Carl Jung did not use the term egregore in the occult sense, many practitioners see significant parallels between his theories and the concept of collective psychic fields. Jung proposed that existence of what he called the collective unconscious, a deeper layer of the psyche shared by all human beings. Within this realm exist universal patterns known as archetypes. These archetypes include figures such as the wise old man, the great mother, the hero, the trickster, the king, the magician, and the countless others that appear repeatedly throughout mythology, religion, dreams, and spiritual traditions. Some occultists view egregores as structures that emerge when groups organize themselves around specific archetypal patterns. The egregore becomes a vessel through which an archetype expresses itself within a culture, organization, or tradition. In this sense, archetypes may represent universal forces, while egregores represent localized manifestations of those forces. One of the most controversial questions in modern occultism concerns the relationship between deities and egregores. Some practitioners argue that many gods, spirits, and religious figures function as powerful egregores created and sustained through centuries of worship, prayer, devotion, and ritual activity. Others strongly disagree, arguing that spiritual beings exist independently of human belief and that religious devotion simply creates a connection to already existing intelligences. Still others adopt a middle position, suggesting that both phenomena may occur simultaneously. A deity may possess an independent existence while also generating an egregoric field through the collective attention of worshippers. This debate remains unresolved and continues to be one of the most fascinating discussions within contemporary esotericism. Few places demonstrate the power of egregores more clearly than initiatory traditions. Throughout history, mystical schools, Rosicrucian orders, magical lodges, and esoteric organizations have developed distinct atmospheres, teachings, symbols, rituals, and currents of energy. Many initiates describe feeling a particular presence associated with the tradition long before fully understanding its teachings. This phenomenon is often attributed to the organization's egregore. As generations participate in rituals, meditations, initiations, and study, the collective field grows stronger. New members enter not merely a group, but an established current of accumulated intention and experience. For this reason, many esoteric traditions place great importance upon continuity, lineage, and preserving the integrity of their teachings. Some occult practitioners consciously work with egregores rather than simply participating in them unconsciously. The first step is awareness. One must recognize with collective systems they are influencing one's thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and beliefs. Once recognized, the practitioner may choose to strengthen, weaken, modify, or withdraw from particular egregoric influences. Some magicians deliberately align themselves with positive egregores associated with wisdom, healing, spiritual growth, creativity, or service. Others seek to identify and free themselves from destructive collective influences that limit personal development. In either case, awareness transforms unconscious participation into conscious engagement. And this is what I was getting at earlier. The study of egregores reveals an important spiritual lesson. Much of what we consider our personal identity may actually be inherited from collective systems. Many beliefs, fears, assumptions, desires, and values originate not within ourselves, but within the groups to which we belong. This realization can be profoundly liberating. As practitioners, we become aware of these influences. They gain the ability to examine them consciously. They can ask whether a particular belief genuinely reflects their own understanding or whether it has simply been absorbed from a larger collective field. The study of egregores therefore becomes a tool for self-knowledge and spiritual discernment. Never before in human history have people been exposed to so many competing egregores simultaneously. Social media, news networks, political movements, entertainment industries, religious organizations, corporations, online communities, and global cultures all compete for attention. Every system seeks energy. Every system seeks participation. Every system seeks influence. Understanding egregores allows us to navigate this landscape with greater awareness. Rather than unconsciously feeding every collective force that demands our attention, we can choose which currents deserve our energy and which do not. In a very real sense, attention has become one of the most valuable forms of power in the modern world. So just be very conscious of what you are feeding your attention into. Perhaps the most important contribution of the egregore concept is that it expands our understanding of consciousness itself. It challenges the assumption that consciousness exists only within isolated individuals. Instead, it suggests that minds may interact, overlap, and participate in larger fields of influence. The idea forces us to reconsider the nature of belief, identity, culture, spirituality, and even reality itself. Whether interpreted through psychology, metaphysics, sociology, or occult philosophy, the egregore reveals that human beings are constantly participating in forces larger than themselves. The question is not whether we participate. The question is whether we do so consciously. Perhaps the greatest mystery surrounding egregores is that they blur the boundary between idea and entity. Most people think of ideas as passive things, concepts that exist only within the mind. The egregore suggests something far stranger. It proposes that ideas, when nourished by enough attention, emotion, symbolism, and belief, can acquire a kind of life of their own. They begin influencing behavior, they shape communities, they alter cultures, they inspire devotion, they persist across generations. In this sense, the egregore represents one of the most fascinating possibilities within occult philosophy, that consciousness itself may be capable of creating realities that exist somewhere between thought and being. When viewed from a broader perspective, the study of egregores forces us to confront profound questions about the nature of reality. How much of civilization is built upon collective belief? How many institutions, traditions, and identities exist because generations of people continue to invest energy into them? What happens when millions of minds focus upon the same idea? And at what point does a thought become something more? For centuries, mystics, magicians, philosophers, psychologists, and spiritual seekers have wrestled with these questions. No single answer has emerged, yet the mystery itself remains deeply compelling. The concept of the egregore invites us to see the world differently. It encourages us to recognize that beyond every moment, every tradition, every culture, every nation, every religion, every organization exists as invisible dimensions composed of shared consciousness and collective meaning. The study of egregores stands at the crossroads of psychology, spirituality, sociology, and occult philosophy. It challenges us to rethink the relationship between the individual and the collective, between thought and reality, between belief and influence. Whether understood as psychic entities, collective thought forms, archetypal expressions, social fields, or metaphysical realities, egregores reveal that human consciousness possesses dimensions far more complex than we can ever imagine. They remind us that ideas are not merely abstract concepts. Ideas shape cultures. Ideas build civilizations. They inspire revolutions. They create religions, organizations, nations, and movements. Ideas influence the course of history itself. Perhaps the most important lesson of the egregore is that every act of attention matters. Every belief we reinforce, every symbol we empower, every community we support, every idea we nourish contributes to something larger than ourselves. The ancient occultists understood that human beings are not merely observers of reality, but participants in its creation. Through thought, intention, emotion, and collective action, we help shape the invisible structures that influence the world around us. And perhaps that is the deepest mystery of all, that somewhere between mind and matter, between imagination and reality, between individual and the collective, there may exist living currents of consciousness woven together by the thoughts of humanity itself. The egregore stands as a reminder that the unseen world may be far more alive, interconnected, and responsive than we have ever dared to imagine. Okay, you guys, there you have it. I hope this helps you understand egregores, thought forms, all of this on a deeper level. Okay, so up next we are going to have Enochian magic, and then I'm going to do a bunch of other things: the Arbitel, Picatrix, Kia Solomon, Kabbalion, and Hermeticism. Looking forward to seeing you guys soon. Bye.